Sometimes life will try to pull you into battles that were never designed for you to fight. People will test you, situations will drain you, and the enemy will whisper that you've got to defend yourself, prove yourself, or clap back just to survive. But there comes a moment in your journey where God whispers, "Be still, focus on you. Let me fight this battle." This sermon is about learning the discipline of silence, the strength in stillness, and the power of letting God step into places where your voice isn't enough. You don't have to prove who you are. God will do that for you. You don't have to fight for your reputation. He's already secured it. What you need to do is keep building, keep growing, keep walking, and let the noise around you fade into the background while God fights for you. Silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Too often we live in a world that eats strength, as if Omaha won the battle. But true strength is not in how loud you can get. It's in how quiet you can remain when everything in you wants to respond. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the control of it. When you choose silence, you are saying that you don't have to fight on their level because you trust God to handle it on His level. And when God steps in, He doesn't just settle arguments, He settles destinies. Think about it. Silence in the face of provocation requires discipline. It requires you to crucify your flesh, to silence your ego, and to resist the urge to prove yourself. The flesh wants to defend, the ego wants to be validated, but the spirit knows that your value isn't determined by people's perception. Every time you hold your tongue when you could have unleashed a storm, you're demonstrating that you've mastered something most people never do. You've mastered yourself. And self-mastery is what positions you to handle the greater levels God wants to release into your life. Silence is not passive. It's active warfare in the spiritual realm. When you stay silent, you're not doing nothing. You're letting God do everything. You're giving Him space to show Himself strong on your behalf. The children of Israel were trapped at the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind them, and the natural instinct would have been panic, screams, or arguments. But God told them to be still, to stand firm, and to watch Him fight for them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the middle of an attack is to stand still and keep your mouth shut, because your silence is an announcement that you trust God more than you trust your own words. The enemy thrives off reaction. He feeds off your energy, your fear, your frustration, and your emotional responses. That's why he tries so hard to push your buttons, because if he can get you to react, he can pull you out of position. But when you stay silent, you starve the enemy of the satisfaction he craves. You strip him of the ability to manipulate your emotions and redirect your focus. Silence becomes your shield. It becomes your strategy. It becomes the tool that keeps you aligned with what God is building in you, instead of what the enemy is trying to break in you. Silence also reveals maturity. Anybody can talk. Anybody can clap back. But not everybody can hold their peace and trust God. The higher you go, the more your silence will be required, because your destiny is too valuable to be wasted on distractions. You don't see eagles arguing with chickens, they just soar above. And when you understand that God is elevating you, you learn that every response is not worth your energy. You save your words for prayers, for declarations, for building, not for defending yourself to people who don't even have the power to bless your future. And silence, when it's rooted in God, carries a power that words can't touch. Your silence can shift atmospheres, because it's not about ignoring the problem. It's about acknowledging the one who solves it. It's about saying, "Lord, this is too heavy for me, but it's nothing for you. So I will keep my mouth shut and my eyes on you." And when you do that, you start to see God move in ways that your words could never accomplish. Growth happens when your focus shifts inward. We live in a world that constantly tells us to look outward, to measure our lives by what people are doing, wearing, achieving, and posting. Comparison has become the silent thief of joy, because it distracts you from the work God is doing inside of you. When your eyes are fixed on everyone else's journey, you will always feel behind, overlooked, or not enough. But when you shift that focus inward, you begin to realize that real growth doesn't come from measuring yourself against others. It comes from measuring yourself against who you were yesterday. God is not concerned with you keeping up with the person next to you. He's concerned with you becoming who He created you to be. Growth is not always visible to the outside world. It's not always a promotion, a new car, or a public applause. Sometimes growth looks like being able to walk away from an argument that you would have fought last year. Sometimes growth is not texting back, not seeking revenge, not letting your emotions control you like they used to. Growth can be quiet, hidden, even misunderstood, but that doesn't make it any less real. It is in those private victories, those silent battles that nobody else sees, where God is shaping your character and preparing you for greater. When you focus inward, you start to hear God more clearly. The noise of comparison fades and His voice becomes louder. You start to ask questions like, Lord, what are you doing in me? What do you want me to let go of? What do you want me to embrace? That inward focus becomes the soil where transformation takes place. Because God is less interested in how polished your outside looks and more interested in how surrendered your inside is. He can bless the exterior, but if the interior is broken, the blessing will crush you. That's why He takes you through seasons where the work He's doing in you can't be posted, can't be applauded, can't be validated by people. It's just between you and Him. Shifting inward also requires honesty. It's easy to point fingers outward and blame people for where we are, but growth demands accountability. You can't heal what you won't confront. You can't grow past what you keep ignoring. God will use your inward focus to shine a light on wounds you thought were gone, insecurities you've hidden, and habits you've excused. And though it's uncomfortable, it's necessary, because what you refuse to face will eventually control you, but what you confront, God can transform. The enemy wants to keep you so distracted outwardly that you never deal with what's happening inwardly. He wants you chasing validation, chasing applause, chasing comparison, because as long as you're running outward, you'll never be rooted inward. But when you finally slow down and say, Lord, search me, break me, heal me, you position yourself for true breakthrough. That's when you stop growing for people and start growing for purpose. That's when your maturity begins to match your anointing. That's when you realize you don't need to prove growth to anybody else, because the evidence will show up in your fruit. And fruit doesn't lie. Fruit can't be faked. You can talk like you've grown. You can dress like you've grown. You can post like you've grown. But eventually the fruit of your life will tell the truth. When the focus shifts inward, your fruit changes. Your responses change. Your choices change. Your peace changes. That's why the Bible says, by their fruit you will know them, not by their followers, not by their outfits, not by their titles, by their fruit. And fruit only grows when the root is nurtured, when the soil is healthy, when what's happening inward is stronger than what's happening outward. Not every battle requires your response. One of the biggest lessons you will ever learn is that silence is not surrender, and walking away is not weakness. Some of us are exhausted not because life is too heavy, but because we are fighting battles that were never ours to begin with. We are defending ourselves against accusations, trying to prove ourselves to people who have already made up their minds, engaging in arguments that can never be won because they were never about truth, only about noise. And the truth is, the more you engage with the wrong battles, the less strength you have for the right ones. When you spend your energy on battles that don't matter, you rob yourself of the energy you need for the battles that actually do. Every battle has a price, and every response has a cost. The question is, are you willing to spend the priceless gift of your peace, your time, and your destiny on something that doesn't deserve it? Jesus himself gave us the model. There were times he was silent when he could have spoken, times he walked away when he could have stood his ground, times he let people talk, accuse, and criticize without ever clapping back. And it wasn't because he couldn't win the argument, it was because he understood his assignment. That's the key. When you know your assignment, you stop wasting energy on distractions. The enemy loves to bait you into unnecessary fights because he knows if he can keep you fighting small battles, you won't have the strength to win the big one. That's why sometimes you've got to pause and ask yourself, is this battle worth my destiny? Is this argument worth my peace? Is this response worth my calling? Because if the answer is no, then your silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. The greatest victories often come from restraint. It takes more strength to not respond than it does to fire back. Anybody can argue, anybody can clap back, but not everybody can hold their peace and keep walking. That takes maturity. That takes perspective. That takes knowing that your value is not diminished by somebody's words. You don't have to defend what God has already stamped his approval on. You don't have to fight for what he has already promised you. If the Lord has declared it over your life, then no battle, no rumor, no accusation can undo what he's established. Not every battle is yours because some battles are simply distractions dressed as warfare. They look like a fight. They sound like a fight, but really they're traps. They're designed to pull you out of character, to get you emotional, to distract you from your assignment. That's why discernment is so important. You have to know which battles God called you to and which battles he called you to walk away from. Because when you fight every battle, you lose sight of the war. The enemy doesn't need to defeat you if he can distract you. And distraction is often more dangerous than defeat because it feels like movement, but it leads nowhere. When you don't respond to every battle, you are not ignoring it. You are elevating above it. You are making a conscious decision to say, this is beneath the level God is calling me to. Just because someone throws stones doesn't mean you have to stop building the wall. Nehemiah knew this. When Sanballat and Tobiah mocked him and tried to pull him into arguments, he didn't climb down from the wall. He stayed focused on building. And that's what God is calling you to do. Keep building, keep moving, keep growing, and let the noise fade behind you. You don't need to fight every battle because God fights for you. He said, vengeance is mine. He said, I will fight for you. You only need to be still. And if you really believe that, then silence becomes your weapon, restraint becomes your armor, and peace becomes your proof. Not every battle deserves your breath. Not every enemy deserves your attention. And not every accusation deserves your response. God's defense is stronger than your defense. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove ourselves to people, trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to make them see our heart, our effort, our truth. But the reality is, no matter how many words you use, no matter how many explanations you give, people will believe what they want to believe. Some will twist your words, others will misinterpret your intentions, and some will never be satisfied no matter what you say. That's why putting your trust in your own defense will always leave you drained and disappointed. But when you shift the weight from your defense to God's defense, you step into a power that cannot be silenced, twisted, or defeated. God knows what people can't see. He knows the motives of your heart, the purity of your intentions, the sacrifices you've made in silence that nobody else will ever applaud. He knows the lies that have been spoken, the misunderstandings that have been spread, the moments where you've been painted as something you're not. And when God chooses to defend you, he doesn't just clear your name, he elevates it. He doesn't just silence your enemies, he prepares a table for you in their presence. He doesn't just fight for you in the shadows, he vindicates you in the light. His defense is not about proving you right, it's about proving him faithful. The thing about God's defense is that it's often slower than our flesh wants it to be. We want immediate vindication, instant clapbacks, quick justice. But God's defense works on a different timeline. He's not just trying to protect your feelings in the moment. He's trying to establish your destiny in the long run. Sometimes he allows the whispers, the lies, the opposition, because he's using them to refine you, to stretch you, to strengthen you. And when the time comes, his defense will not just correct the narrative, it will reveal the strength he built in you while you were silent. David knew something about this. When Saul came after him, accusing him, chasing him, trying to kill him, David had plenty of opportunities to defend himself. He could have fought back. He could have killed Saul. He could have proven his innocence. But David chose restraint. He said, I will not touch the Lord's anointed. And in that decision, he showed us that real power is not in defending yourself. It's in trusting God to do it for you. When God defended David, he didn't just remove Saul. He positioned David on the throne. And that's what happens when you let God handle it. He doesn't just end the attack. He shifts the season. Your defense can win arguments, but God's defense wins destinies. Your defense can silence one voice, but God's defense silences entire atmospheres. Your defense can make people hear you, but God's defense makes people see him in you. And isn't that the goal? That when people look at your life, they don't just see someone who survived the rumors or outlasted the critics, but they see someone who trusted God enough to stay silent while he fought. That kind of testimony speaks louder than any clapback ever could. And when God defends you, it always comes with promotion. Vindication is never the end, it's the beginning of a new level. Joseph was falsely accused, thrown in prison, forgotten. But when God defended him, he didn't just clear Joseph's name, he elevated him to second in command over Egypt. That's the kind of defense God provides. It's not about justifying you to people. It's about positioning you for purpose. That's why his defense is stronger than yours, because it doesn't just deal with the problem, it unlocks the promise. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them doubt. Your silence is not defeat, it's faith. Your restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because while you are holding your peace, God is building your platform. While you are choosing not to fight, God is writing your victory. And when he shows up, his defense will not just silence the noise, it will amplify his glory through your story. Focus builds discipline, silence builds trust. One of the hardest things to master in life is where you place your focus, because whatever has your focus has your power. If your focus is scattered, your power is scattered. If your focus is misplaced, your energy is wasted. But when you learn to fix your eyes on what God has placed before you and not on what's happening around you, discipline begins to form. Discipline is not something that shows up overnight. It's built decision by decision, choice by choice, moment by moment. And it is birthed in the place of focus. Focus is what keeps you grounded when life is pulling you in 1,000 directions. It's what keeps you consistent when distractions scream for your attention. It's what makes you wake up early when your flesh wants to sleep in, pray when your mind wants to wander, keep pushing when quitting feels easier. Focus becomes the bridge between vision and manifestation. Anybody can have a dream, but only the focused will have the discipline to see that dream come to life. And silence, it works on a different level. Silence is where trust is built, because silence requires you to release control. When you stay silent instead of defending yourself, you are trusting that God sees. When you stay silent instead of fighting back, you are trusting that God hears. When you stay silent instead of proving your point, you are trusting that God will vindicate. Silence is not empty, it's full of faith. It's your way of saying, Lord, I don't have to be loud to be heard. I don't have to fight to be seen. I trust you enough to let my silence speak louder than my words. Together, focus and silence create a rhythm that shifts your life. Focus without silence will exhaust you, because you'll still be trying to control how people see you while you're building what God called you to. Silence without focus will paralyze you, because you'll stay still but never grow. But when you have both, you find yourself building with discipline and waiting with trust. You're able to move forward in purpose without being distracted by the noise, and you're able to remain at peace while God works out what you can't control. The enemy doesn't always come to steal your destiny outright. Sometimes he just comes to steal your focus. He knows if he can get you tangled in the wrong arguments, obsessed with the wrong people, or consumed with the wrong desires, he doesn't have to destroy you, because you'll destroy yourself through distraction. That's why your focus is so sacred. Protecting your focus is protecting your destiny. And when silence comes into the picture, it reinforces that protection, because silence builds trust that God is covering you while you cover the assignment he gave you. Think about it like this. Discipline is the muscle. Trust is the heart. Focus builds the muscle that makes you strong enough to carry the weight of your calling. And silence builds the heart that keeps you connected to the one who called you. If you have discipline without trust, you'll become self-reliant and eventually burn out. If you have trust without discipline, you'll have faith but no fruit. But when discipline and trust come together, you have the strength to work and the faith to wait, the power to build and the peace to rest. So every time you choose focus, you're training your spirit to be disciplined. And every time you choose silence, you're training your heart to trust. It's not about ignoring life, it's about aligning with God. It's about saying, Lord, I will stay focused on what you've called me to, and I will stay silent where you've called me to trust you. And in that balance, you'll find yourself becoming both stronger and softer, disciplined enough to run your race and surrendered enough to let him fight your battles. Your peace is proof of God's presence. In a world that thrives on chaos, arguments, and noise, peace is the loudest testimony you could ever carry. When everything around you says you should be panicking, but you're still calm, people notice. When they expect you to clap back, but you stay silent, people notice. When storms are raging, but your spirit is steady, people notice. And what they're noticing is not your strength, not your personality, but the presence of God resting on you. Peace is not something you create for yourself. It is something that comes when you surrender yourself to the one who holds it all. Peace doesn't mean there's no storm. It means the storm doesn't own you. Peace doesn't mean there's no battle. It means the battle doesn't shake your faith. Peace doesn't mean there's no opposition. It means opposition doesn't have authority over your destiny. When God is present, peace is inevitable because his presence carries stability that nothing else can provide. That's why scripture calls him the Prince of Peace, because he doesn't just bring calm, he rules over it. He reigns in it. And when he steps into your life, he rules over the chaos trying to break you. He reigns over the storm trying to drown you. Your peace is also your protection. The enemy thrives on agitation, on frustration, on chaos. If he can get you anxious, he can control your decisions. If he can get you fearful, he can distort your faith. If he can get you restless, he can drain your strength. But peace keeps you guarded. Peace keeps you centered. Peace becomes a shield that blocks the fiery darts of the enemy. When you refuse to let your peace be disturbed, you're actually declaring war on the enemy's strategy. Because you're saying, you will not control my emotions. You will not rob my focus. You will not shake my trust in God. Peace is not weakness, it's warfare. Anybody can respond with anger. Anybody can panic under pressure, but it takes divine strength to stay at rest when everything is pushing you to react. That's why Paul said, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds. Peace doesn't just comfort you, it guards you. It stands at the doorway of your mind and your heart, keeping out fear, keeping out doubt, keeping out lies. That peace is not natural, it's supernatural. And the fact that you can walk through fire and still smile, that you can stand in loss and still breathe, that you can be misunderstood and still stay calm, that is proof that God is with you. And here's the thing, peace is contagious. When you carry God's peace, it impacts the people around you. Your calm becomes a testimony. Your stability becomes an anchor. People who are spiraling begin to steady themselves just by being in your presence, because his presence is on you. That's why carrying peace is not just about you. It's about being a living testimony that God is real, that he is near, and that he is faithful. Peace is also prophetic. It declares that you trust the outcome before the outcome arrives. It announces that you believe God's promises before they manifest. It proclaims that no matter what the enemy tries, the victory is already secured. Your peace becomes a prophecy over your future, saying God is in control, so I don't have to be. And when you live like that, people can't help but see the evidence of his presence all over your life. So don't underestimate your peace. It's not just a feeling, it's proof. Proof that God is with you, proof that his spirit is guiding you, proof that his hand is holding you. When you walk in peace, you're walking in his presence. And when you carry his presence, you carry power that no storm, no battle, and no enemy can ever take away.